Hello, everybody on YouTube. We'll be getting started in just a moment. Test. My sound quality sounds very strange to me, and I'm not sure why. Although I think I know. Hang on just a moment, folks, and we'll get started in just a bit. Okay, testing my sound quality now. I think this is more to me than anybody else at this point, so keep that in mind. There we go. It sounds good. The issue was that the Mac had defaulted to my AirPods as the default sound device. So I was having the YouTube stream coming back so I could hear it, kind of monitor how I was sounding. And everything was being played through the terrible headphone quality of using the microphone on the headphones and the when the microphone's open on any Bluetooth headset, it sounds terrible. So I was hearing it sound terrible, but everybody else was not. So looks like we have two people in chat, which is one more than we usually have. So if you're in chat, please say hello. It is so interesting what account Google decides to throw you into when you are using Safari. I use several different Google accounts, and it's just like, oh yeah, we're going to pick this one instead of, the one that you're streaming on that you're obviously logged into. So that always just really never makes sense to me. Never has. So, all right, let me get the recording going in Zoom. And I don't have to worry about a got it button. All right. All right, folks, this is going to be a great programmatic episode. So feel free to put things in the chat. It's going to be fantastic. And we are going to have some great content today. We're going to be talking about the different programming styles. I got some explanations that I'm going to use from ChatGPT, and we're going to talk about how to pick a good web host. So let's get started with the podcast. So 3, 2, 1. All right, and hello everybody. Welcome back to Programmatic. My name is Michael Dowies, and it's good to be back with you all this wonderful week. We recorded a day late because there was just a lot to get done to publish the last episode. We had a lot of code that we had in the results. So something that we thought about was if you could basically take your code that you have for a solution and throw it through ChatGPT and tell it to remove the extra text or the punctuation. Could it do that? And it does not seem to do it. It wants to keep it all as code and try to remove. It's trying to be smarter than we are and remove the punctuation from the actual string. So like if there's a print statement, it would go in and remove the parentheses or punctuation and put them as words in the strings. Now, one thing that I did get it to do is I said replace all semicolons in this code with the word semicolon, and it did that. So that was helpful for JavaScript. Unfortunately, that's the only language we do our examples in that are using semicolons. So yeah, that didn't help. When I tried to do parentheses, I was like, nope, not going to do it. Won't do it. So that was not very effective there. So unfortunately, I still have to do those by hand. So it takes a good little while to do that. It takes a editing project that really shouldn't take very long, quite a bit longer to convert all of that to text, then throw it through 11 Labs and then have that converted to audio and then put that into the tracks. But I think it really sounds great, and I haven't gotten any feedback so far, so I'm curious what people think of how we're doing our code snippets in the episodes. And in fact, I will have an snippet in here today, and I will talk about that after we do our solutions. Our last challenge was to use an array to build an app or a console application that could have a list of names or items, and basically the results that will be in the full version, sorry YouTube folks, that will be in the full version of the podcast will be of Swift UI and of other possible UI frameworks showing a list. I think I'm going to mainly focus on Swift UI, so we may not have a JavaScript, or if we do have a JavaScript and Python version, it might be console applications because it's easy to generate a Swift UI list, and it's because it's so short. But making a whole Python, UI that has a list would be a little more difficult in a JavaScript application. So we're going to probably just have one programming solution for this lesson or this challenge result this time. So maybe two, showing a Swift or Python array. So we'll see. We'll see what we get. So the other snippet, let me back up. So here's going to be the results of that challenge. We have the Swift, the JavaScript, and now we have our Python result. So we'll have one of each, and we may have to make some edits and things like that based on what we have. So I want to thank 11 Labs for providing that again. And also, I want to talk about one of my projects that I just worked on, which I'm going to use 11 Labs and have it read the project because it's very short. And what that is a Python script that is a Discord bot. And you'll be able to find this in GitHub. I have to make a few edits to make that ready to go. But you'll find it in GitHub on my repos. That will send an alert to a channel when somebody joins voice. So I'm going to have the Python voice that we use from 11 Labs go ahead and read that source snippet right here. All right, so that's really exciting stuff, and it's working now. And this brings up one of the first topic I'm going to go through today, and that's how to pick a good web host. I think people that know me have known that I've gone through the list of web hosts. I've gone from Bluehost to NameHero to, so many others. I've even built my own through Linode using cPanel and DigitalOcean using cPanel and all kinds of others. And I've never really been happy with any of them that use cPanel. I've tried DreamHost, and I used a small VPS there, but it didn't have enough RAM, so I thought it wasn't working. So how do you pick the right web host for your website? Whether you're programming your website as a Node.js application or it's a WordPress site, Drupal site, any of these things, it's important to know how to pick a good web host. So there's a few factors here. It depends on, one, how your website's going to scale. Is it going to be a small website that you and just a few people are going to use? Or will it be a bigger website that everybody, will be like e-commerce website, all those kind of things, right? So all of those things matter. So, I use cPanel because that's what I always knew to be the best, right? It's what has always worked for me. And, I don't know of any other, I never knew of any other panel that would really provide what I needed to do. And so that's why I've always used it. I've never used Plesk. I've never used all of those things. But I know for some people, it works really, really well. So those things are, some things that people use that I've never messed with. I went back to DreamHost because I know a lot of people use it, and it's fantastic. I've set up a faster VPS, and everything works so much better. No RAM issues, no CPU problems. It just works well. And then I got to playing with some of the enhanced virtual private server VPS features. And I determined that one of the neat things about it is you do have shell access. I logged in through SSH, and it's fantastic. You can install applications. I put the Discord bot in a folder outside of the iAccessibility.net folder, and I ran I set it up and saved it there. And then I set up what you can set up cron jobs inside the DreamHost panel. It is so fantastically easy. And I was able to set this Discord bot up, and it runs on server start. I just told my server to restart, and hey, the Discord bot's running. It's just that easy. And so, the bot doesn't do anything. It doesn't take up much memory. So it's very nice, the customization that you have on a place like DreamHost. And, one of the aspects of cPanel that is a pain, if you want to use Node.js or Python with Django, which is their one of their web services, Flask is another. If you want to use those on cPanel or others, you have to set up what's called Passenger. And that's not the easiest thing to do. You have to know where to do it. And in DreamHost, it's just a checkbox that you go and find. So, if you want a VPS with DreamHost, it's going to give you the most support for what you're trying to do. They do have shared hosting as well, and that's for like smaller websites, but you can scale your sites with the VPS or have multiple websites and manage them from one place, and that's fantastic. They also set up multiple, like each individual account has its own user, and it's not cPanel. So it's not as easy for that account to get hacked as it is on cPanel. So another thing is cPanel is now enforcing a user limit. So I don't know that I could recommend that based on, if you want 30 websites, you could do that on cPanel with certain number of users, but it's more difficult. With DreamHost, it's just that easy. So I highly recommend checking out DreamHost. There's other resources out there, so just pick the one that works best for you. And one thing that is important when picking a web host is technical support. If something goes wrong, because inevitably it's not a matter of if something goes wrong, but when something goes wrong, can you fix it? Do you know how to fix it? And will the people that are at technical support be there to support you, or do they not know their job? When I was working with my last hosting provider, they did not know how to do. I tried to do something, it broke email. They didn't know how to fix it because they didn't understand what they needed to do. So I have to recommend that you go with a place, and DreamHost has been a good place for me for technical support. If I have a question or an issue, they're on chat, always ready to help. So that's, and they've always understood my questions. So keep those things in mind when you're looking for a place to put your website, especially if you're putting a WordPress website up. It's important to really find a place that's going to be a good home and that's secure. So that is my spiel about finding a good web host, because I feel like that's important. You could be building a project and you're looking for a place to put the website for the project. Like you're building an app and you need a place to host that app, a website. That's a good place to do it. I will put my referral link in the show notes, so be on the lookout for that. All right, so on to the topic that I told you guys that we'd be talking about in the last episode. It's really interesting because we've talked about different programming languages interpreted and compiled. And so, a lot of podcasts you could just dip your toes in no matter what episode, but I highly recommend that you listen to all of our episodes. And I know that's like a lot of time, but I hope these are fun and engaging. So I would recommend that you listen to our last one about interpreted and compiled languages, because this kind of goes from that. And this is about programming styles, right? What are the different styles of programming out there, and which one will work for what you're trying to do? And, if you're in iOS land, we have, two big frameworks. We have UIKit. On the Mac, we have AppKit. And now we have Swift UI, which kind of combines both of those into one. Well, it combines UIKit, AppKit, and WatchKit, and all those things into one programming paradigm. And Swift UI is using something that a lot of people are not familiar with, and that's called declarative programming. And so what is declarative programming? And what are the other ones out there? A lot of people are very much used to object-oriented programming. And, when you build iOS apps, you're using object-oriented programming and event-driven programming. So I'm using a bunch of terms: declarative, object-oriented, event-driven. There's functional programming, all these other styles. Today, we're going to focus mainly on the ones that relate to building apps with UIKit and Swift UI. And that's three main types. And that's declarative programming for Swift UI, event-driven programming, and object-oriented programming for UIKit. And I stick with these because these are kind of my wheelhouse, right? This is the areas of development that I've worked with the most. But I'd be curious to hear other people's talk. What do you use with C# and different UI elements in programming for building Windows applications? I know React and things like that use declarative as well. So how is that different? And I think we need to have a whole episode at some point on the JavaScript libraries out there: Svelte, React, React Native. What is all that? And we'll do that. But I think we're kind of doing more fundamentals and things like that here for now. So Swift UI is declarative, and then we have UI Kit, which uses the other methods. So object-oriented programming is where you have objects that have properties and methods or functions, basically. So my name is Michael. I'm an instance of a human, which is an object, also known as a class. And I have properties like skin color. I would say hair color, but I don't have any hair, so that doesn't really work. I have skin color, eye color. There's things that define me. I have hands with 5 fingers. And I have functions or methods like walk, talk, eat, sleep. Those are all methods. And when we look at all of our classes, we have tables. And I'm not talking about like a table on the web. I'm talking about a table that we sit at and eat. A table has its own properties. It has legs, number of legs, right? And then we have instances of the table, right? So going back to humans, you're an instance of the human class, but you're an instance of that, but you have your own methods and values. So when we build an application in UIKit, we create a new instance of a view controller, for example. So like if I want to show a screen with certain items on it, I create an instance of the view controller class and override different functions and methods that it has and set my own properties on that instance. So it's an instance of the view controller, but it's not the original class, if that makes sense. So that's object-oriented programming on a very, very high level. When we talk about declarative programming, though, it's a little different. Declarative programming, and I'm very new to this, so if one of you guys that are experts hear this and you're like, no, Michael, that's totally wrong, please call me out and say, yeah, no, man, that's wrong. Declarative programming, as I see it, is programming where you're writing out your user interface by declaring all possible states. So, for example, as an example, I could write a text, which is a label, with some static text. It will never change. But I could also create a text variable with, I could create a text label with a variable that is a state variable. So the variable will look at what's in it, and then the text field will change based on the contents of that. So if I have a image and I change the image after tapping a button, I'm not making a new image, or I'm not changing the property on the image that I've already created. It basically redraws the image very quickly with the new thing, with the new image inside. So it's looking at all possible states and conditions at create time instead of, you telling it at certain times to do things. The term for this is also for UIKit, when this happens, is called event-driven programming. And that means that buttons and other UI elements in our application change based on events. If I click the button, it will do this, right? So that's the big difference between declarative and event-driven and object-oriented. With declarative, I'm saying, here is this text field or this button, and here's what it will do. This is this button, text field or label or button, and this is what it will do, no matter what. And so we're declaring how this stuff works when we declare the item at create time. So, so if I have a if I'm loading data from the web, then I'm already, going to say, if there's no data, show this. If there's data, do this. And so it already knows how it should display no matter the conditions. So that's why it's declarative. We're declaring how this thing should be. Now, I think a lot of people are very used to object-oriented and event-driven programming, and it's very difficult to change how you look at these things. So I really am a big fan of learning all of these, but I would pick one and start with it and then learn the other before you really go into another thing, if that makes sense. So if you're picking declarative, go with that. If you're picking functional programming, go with that. If you're picking event-driven and object-oriented programming, go with that and learn those things before you learn something else. So that's my big talk on that. And it's very interesting. So, a lot of languages support multiple programming styles. Swift can support declarative through structs, and it can support programmatic, not programmatic, 3, 2, 1. And it can support functional through closures and other things, but it also supports object-oriented programming and event-driven through UIKit, delegation, and classes. So it's very, you just have to see how your language of choice supports these different things. Python supports classes, JavaScript supports classes, and it also supports, saving states. React is based on declarative. I remember seeing that, at least React Native is. So it's interesting to learn what you're trying to do. If you're building a Swift UI app, you need to learn the declarative style. If you're using UIKit, you need to learn the object-oriented programming and event-driven styles of programming. So if you have any questions, I'd be curious to know, is there clarification you guys would like to hear, or how can we expand on this? And I'm sure we'll have other discussions about these things in the future, but I think this is kind of a good getting started jump off point for a lot of this kind of discussion. So I really am happy to have been able to do this and to talk about these things today. And we will have another episode next week, but don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the challenge. So we're going to go ahead and have another challenge this week. We do it every week. So this time, what I think we should do is to, let's see, this will be an edit because I'm thinking of a good challenge because I haven't had one in advance. So if anybody's on YouTube and you've got a good challenge idea, I'd love to hear it. I've got one. Okay, here's what we'll do. Using your language of choice, take a website or URL and get the contents of some piece of content on the web, whether it be an API call or whether it be just HTML from a website. Shell scripting even counts. Hint, curl, C-U-R-L, very useful. So you could try that, or try to do it in Swift or JavaScript or Python, and then print the content to the screen. That's going to be kind of a fun one, I think. I do a lot of this for parsing XML. I have to get the contents of a URL and throw it through a parser. And so this will be a fun challenge to do. So I will have the results in the next episode of Programmatic. And I'm, just happy that we've been doing these every week. And I want to know your thoughts. So please let me know, mikedoise@icloud.com. And if you have not been to our website, programmaticpod.com, and we also have a hashtag on Twitter and Mastodon, hashtag programmaticpod, and that will get you to our discussions on those platforms. We also have a Discord, Programming for Everyone, and we have a Facebook group for Programming for Everyone. So feel free to join those, join the discussion, and get your questions answered. We've got great people in all of those groups. So thank you all for being with me again. And I hope you guys enjoy our intro outro music. And I want to thank Epidemic Sounds for producing all of those. And it's really, cool doing this show each week. So I'm excited to be with y'all again in another week. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.